The foolish debt collector wants to talk to my dead father-in-law and doesn't want to believe that he's dead. I got annoyed, so I dumped the entire contents of ashes onto his desk and told him to deal with him. My father-in-law died about 2 years ago. He was living with us at the time due to health issues. About 6 months after his death, we started getting letters from debt collectors asking for unwise amounts of money. We did as asked and provided a copy of his death certificate and were told it was sorted. He didn't have much money and covered his funeral. Father-in-law wanted to be cremated, so we did as asked and had him stashed in a cupboard under the stairs. My wife has put his ashes under a tree but saved some for if we ever move. A few weeks ago we had several suited men turn up at our house. I go out the back door and walk to the front of our house. I ask the men what they are doing on my property and they say they're here to collect on an outstanding debt. I ask to see their paperwork. As I'm looking over the paperwork, they're looking over at my car, work equipment, etc., looking like they've hit a jackpot. I noticed the name was father-in-law and explained to them he'd been dead for about 2 years. They demanded to see him as they have no record of this, and that they would take items to cover his debts. I pull out my phone and text my wife to call the police because of trespassers, and I ask her to put her dad's ashes on the front porch. I tell the debt collectors I've contacted her father and he will be with us shortly, and until he is here they are to wait off my property as I'm the homeowner. I had to show them my ID to prove I wasn't the man they were looking for. Once the police turned up, they all drove back onto my property and I fetched the box of ashes. The debt collectors asked again if they could speak to my father-in-law, so I then handed them the bag of ashes which had a label that read the remains of father-in-law and the date. I looked the main debt collector in the face and said, I told you he was dead several times and you still asked to see him. Hope you guys have a good chat and are able to sort out this mess. Oh, and while you're speaking to him, can you ask him where he left my spare workshop key? I turned to the police and explained how I've also asked them to get off my property several times, and they refused because they needed to see my father-in-law. They hand back the ashes and are getting ready to leave. I looked at the police officer and he burst out laughing. The officer asks if they will be coming back or if they are satisfied with this evidence. They claim to be happy with it. I have now added a lock to my main gate and an intercom. This morning I get a buzz just as I'm getting set up for the morning work. The same debt collection company wants to see the father-in-law again. I grab the box of ashes and copies of the death certificate and head down to the main gate, 2 suited gentlemen and a very large van blocking my gate. I've driven down in my van and I get out of the box and papers in hand. I again explain that he is dead. I show his death certificate and they again ask to speak to him. So I hand over the box and ask for their head office phone number. I stand in front of them calling their boss and explaining that I've shown them the death certificate and his ashes. How do they expect him to pay his debts now he's unalived? They have assured me that they will not be returning. Update: Thursday afternoon, while I'm loading my van and my wife's car, I noticed 2 men in suits standing at the bottom of my driveway by my locked gate. I walked towards them and as I got close they shouted asking to see my dead father-in-law. I explained that he is dead and asked which debt collector agency they worked for. I pulled out my phone and contacted the same person I spoke to last time who claimed this wouldn't happen again. I'm then told that my dead father-in-law called the office and spoke to a different person and that the debt was able to be paid or collected in full. I then hang up and head back to the house again to collect the ashes, death certificate, and the email from the collector. I jump in my car and drive off out of the other exit from my small farm. It takes about an hour and 45 minutes to drive to the office because I live well out in the middle of nowhere. I walked into the office at about 2:30 and asked to see the manager and whoever was above her. I kept waiting about 30 minutes and then asked to go to the office of the big boss. The big boss asks why I'm dealing with this rather than having my father-in-law come and sort it like a man. I pulled out his bag of ashes, dumped the entire contents onto his desk, and replied he was here now, effing deal with him. I also then pulled out the death certificate and email and dumped them in front of him, all while the manager I spoke and had email dealing with stood silent behind him. The big boss turns to the manager and asks if this is true and nothing is just silence. The big boss turns back to me and apologizes for the mix-up and issues and promises this will not happen again. Then asks if I'm going to clean the ashes off his desk. I say no because he was rude about dead father-in-law, so it's down to them to sort and turn to walk out of the office. By the time I'd gotten 15 or 20 meters away from the office, the receptionist came running up with a bag of ashes. Apparently, the big boss made the manager tidy it up and was now shouting and screaming. I get home and have an email waiting from the big boss, basically for all the crap my wife and I have just been through. He is going to give us double what they were demanding in the form of an apology, and he has written off the debt, meaning it can't be sold on or anything like that. I just hope that this is truly the last time I have to deal with this crap. Had a good weekend at the festival, sold loads of my items, made loads of new mates, and calmed down by Saturday morning after spending Friday night drunk and sitting around a fire. Was definitely needed.